So now that you have reviewed the NASW Code of Ethics, let's talk about ethics and professional boundaries. So in the earlier slides, we talked about professionalism, and really professionalism is something that can be, part of any job you have, whether you're working as a nurse or in a call center or, in sales. You really want to make sure that you're using that professionalism. But what about ethics and boundaries? That's where we really get focused on the importance of ethical behavior when working with clients. So ethics are simply defined as the moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. Like I mentioned at the beginning, as social workers, we are really working with those vulnerable individuals. They're struggling, they're affected by trauma, maybe they have insecure housing or access to food. So we have to use that ethical behavior to make sure that we are making decisions and acting in a way that protects those that we work with. The NASW Code of Ethics guides that ethical behavior and includes information about our ethical responsibility to our clients, but also our colleagues, our practice settings, as a professional, the social work profession in general, and really the broader society. As part of ethical behavior, there's a lot of things that we have to do, but one important part of that are professional boundaries. So professional boundaries are clearly established limits or guidelines that allow us as providers to connect safely with our clients and really honor a lot of the rules and standards that the NASW Code of Ethics has. It also includes having a clear understanding of the limits and responsibilities of your role as a service provider. Boundaries allow us to know how far do we go to help individuals, what's safe, what's helpful for them, and what can be harmful. And it is our responsibility to know those limits. So a good example is over the years, I've had a number of individuals that have tried to friend me on Facebook or follow me on Instagram, and we're not allowed to do that, right? We'll talk a little bit later about dual relationships, but really we, as part of our code of ethics, are not supposed to connect with our clients outside of the job that we have. And that means socially, and that means on social media. Now, my individual clients aren't necessarily going to know, but I know. So it's my responsibility to not friend them and to have those boundaries, even if they're not aware of the rule. So why do we need those professional boundaries? Like I said, they really protect our clients and reduce that power differential. We don't want to come in saying, well, I have control of the situation. I'm in charge of you. I get to know everything about you and make decisions for you. Right? There's a power differential in that. So having clear boundaries about what our role is and what the individual that we're working with, their role, it really reduces that power differential. It also allows us to role model healthy communication and professional relationships. So we can show a lot of our clients may struggle with boundary setting in their own lives. They may have people that are not necessarily super healthy that crash on their couches and steal from them or take from them. Well, by role modeling healthy behaviors and healthy boundaries, it allows our clients to also see what that looks like, and maybe they can start using those boundaries with people in their life or having boundaries as a parent or whatever that may look like. Boundaries also keep us from avoiding the rescuer role. Sometimes we want to come in and we want to help people at any cost. We want to rescue them. But that's not always healthy for us or healthy for our individuals. If I'm always stepping in and maybe paying for their cell phone and doing things for them, individuals don't necessarily learn how to take care of themselves and how to step out on their own. It also protects us as professionals from compassion fatigue or secondary traumatic stress. These are concepts that we use a lot. Compassion fatigue is really this idea that over time it can become very exhausted. We don't have anything left to give. Secondary traumatic stress is similar to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. What they found is that in the field of social work and first responders like paramedics and the police, that we hear such traumatic stories from individuals that we can start to internalize that and have symptoms that are similar to our individuals we work with. So listening to a lot of people who struggle with trauma, I might start having nightmares. I might start feeling anxious and triggered and have intrusive thoughts. So having those boundaries and being able to take care of ourselves allows us to be protected from those issues. And at the end of the day, professional boundaries keep the relationship safe for everybody involved. So these might include things like consistent lengths and times of sessions, that if I'm having a bad day, I don't cut the session off at 15 minutes if the client is going to need an hour. It means limits around personal disclosure. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, about what self-disclosure is and what those limits are. It might be limits about the use of touch. Sometimes people want to hug, or we want to hug because they just seem so sad, but a lot of our clients have been traumatized and don't want to be touched. And it can also be kind of a slippery slope. If you're hugging someone a lot, are you going to maybe have some feelings that are above and beyond what's appropriate? It also means we have consistent fair fee settings. We don't charge one client $5 and one client $80 for counseling. We're consistent. And that we have clearly defined client rights and provider rights. You have the right to be safe, but so do our clients. Clear violations of ethical behaviors and boundaries might include things like doing social activities with clients outside of our job. Having romantic or sexual relationships with clients is not okay. Having close friendships with clients. So maybe you saw a person for counseling a year ago and you just really had a lot in common. And now you're friends on Facebook or Instagram and you go to each other's house for coffee. That's a clear violation of ethical behavior. And you can't work with your friends, family members, or colleagues or individuals that you supervise. So if I have my best friend, she can't come to me for counseling. We have to have that boundary. So while there are some behaviors that we know are very unethical, like I said, having romantic or sexual relationships with clients, having close friendships with clients, there are a few areas that have the potential for boundary blurring. So it's not quite as clear about right versus wrong or ethical versus unethical, but there are definitely situations we need to be aware of. The first is the idea of giving or receiving gifts. So sometimes individual clients will want to give you a gift as a thank you, but this really should be avoided almost all of the time. There's a few exceptions, but in general, we want to avoid taking gifts from clients, especially expensive gifts. One example might be if you have a client who's an artist and they want to give you a piece of their art to thank you, well, you're taking away money that they could potentially get by selling that art to someone. It would be easy for a client to want to bring you food or cookies or things they've baked, but sometimes that can start to blur those boundaries and make it feel almost more like a friendship, which is not healthy for you or the client. It's important to check agency policy. Most agencies have some sort of policy limiting the amount. So let's say you can't take anything over $5. Or some agencies say if a client wants to share something as a thank you, it might be something that you say, well, this is great for my office and I'll leave it here. But you really want to make sure you're aware of what your agency policy is. And if you have any uncertainty, make sure you're staffing it. And you really want to examine the why. Why does this client want to give this to you? Or maybe why are you feeling uncomfortable with this situation? The second area is the idea of dual relationships. So this is when you have overlapping relationships. So typically the NASW Code of Ethics says we should not be having overlapping relationships. However, sometimes this can be a bit of a challenge, especially in small towns or rural areas. For example, you may have a son on the Little League team, and that's the same Little League team that your client has a son on. There may be no other options, no other Little League teams in town. What about if you have a small area and both of you attend the same doctor? Sometimes it can be a real challenge to figure out how to navigate those relationships. But in general, we really want to avoid overlapping relationships. And if you do have a scenario where that happens, you want to make sure the client leads and practice a lot of discretion. So say, for example, you're out and you're at the county fair, or you attend an event at a friend's house or something. You want to be really, really careful that you don't run up and say, hey, how are you doing? It's been so long. Now, if you see your client and they come up to you and say, hey, it's really good to see you, we still want to be subtle in how we talk, right? If the person comes up and says, hey, who's this? You're not going to say, oh, I'm Hillary, her counselor, or I'm Hillary, I'm her caseworker, right? You want to leave it up to the client to determine how much they want to share or how they want to introduce you. What a lot of social workers do is they will start that out at the beginning of the session and say, hey, if I see you out in public and I don't say anything to you, it's not because I don't care. It's because I am respecting the confidentiality that our relationship has. The last area that's tricky and often debated among professionals is this idea of self-disclosure, sharing information about yourself. So let's say you're working with someone who's going through a divorce. Self-disclosure might be saying, oh yeah, I've been through a divorce too. It was really hard. In general, we shouldn't be disclosing. We want to stay kind of broad or vague in how we talk about things related to our personal life. Sometimes this is difficult. Clients will say things like, well, are you married? Are you a mom? And so it can be hard to know. There's definitely a continuum. Some counselors and social workers never disclose anything whatsoever about themselves. Some maybe share, they respond quickly like, oh yeah, no, I am married, but let's talk about you. Or, oh yeah, nope, I'm a mom too, I get it, but how can you, and kind of turn the conversation back to them. It just depends a little bit on why they're asking, what they want to know, and how comfortable you are with sharing. One kind of boundary self-check that we can do is asking ourselves a series of questions. So is what I'm about to do, whether it's taking a cookie that they made for you or disclosing something, is this in my client's best interest? Not mine, but theirs. Whose needs are being served? Sometimes when we have a rough day and someone's sharing something, it's easy to be like, yeah, you're right, man. Work has been really hard for me too. Well, at that point, I'm trying to get my needs met by venting or sharing my stuff. It's not about the client's needs. Will this information or action have an impact on the service I'm delivering? Am I taking advantage of the client? By sharing something, is it suddenly making it about me and now they feel like they have to comfort me, which is not our roles? Does this benefit me more than the client? How would this be viewed by the client's family or significant other? If I have a child that I'm working with and I'm disclosing some information, thinking about, well, if the family knew that I was telling their child that, how would they feel? And then the last is, how would I feel telling a colleague about this? If I'm suddenly saying, oh my goodness, I kind of accepted a gift from a client, it was kind of expensive, and I feel sheepish or uncomfortable, then we need to make sure that that's not an action that we're taking. So just remember, we have to be really, really careful. We could do some serious damage if we are not acting ethically. If we are in a position where the client maybe develops feelings for us or they start feeling like this is a friendship and not a social work relationship, well, when it ends, that could be really devastating for them. We also need to make sure we have boundaries because we can burn out really quickly. I want to help individuals, but if I'm working every night till 10 o'clock, just trying to accommodate everybody's schedule and assist all the people, and I'm on call 24 hours a day, that can really burn us out and take away from our own family and our own well-being. So boundaries protect our clients, but they also protect us. And we really want to make sure that, as always, when we are working with vulnerable individuals, we are working to protect them and make sure they feel safe and have a safe place that they can work on their issues.